Okay, so today we're sitting down with Chrissy Love, aka Mourning Gypsy. There's a couple different names there for you, and you'll be able to explain those in a bit. But I met you, 2 years ago? It's been a while. So, and just to be friends with you on Facebook, I absolutely love how you're just like this little shining light. Like every time that you post is like, it's just positive and inspirational, and I'm sure you're not positive and inspirational all the time, but I love like what you're talking about online and everything else. And that wasn't a really great description, but I'd rather you talk about it than me. So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, what you're doing, and yeah, let's get to know you.
All right. Well, my name is Chrissy. I go by Love because I feel like that is the most important thing that we need in the world today, is love. Love, understanding, and compassion is something that humanity has lacked for a very long time. And then the other side of that is Mourning Gypsy. She is my spoken word name. I've been doing spoken word poetry for about 3.5 years now. It's been a really big game changer for me. So the reason that the spoken word is so important to me is it gives me a way to express the horrible things that I grew up with and the things that I saw without having to like blatantly talk about the details. And that's where things become blurred for some people in today's society. I truly believe that we are so obsessed with the grit and the gore and the ugly side of things that we forget about the survivor side. We forget about the people that have overcome and given themselves a new life. Mostly more through anything than I believe that is healing, whether that is like psychotherapy, or if you do healing through art, which I believe is one of the most healing mediums that we can use, whether it's, you know, the brush of, you know, the stroke of paint, or making something, or maybe you're into like scrapbooking, you know, or you do music. It's all art, and it's a beautiful language that not everybody can speak until they learn how to start to heal. So I guess more than anything, that would be who I am. I'm a healer. I've been one my whole life, but until I learned what that looked like for me, it was just a big old clusterfuck. I was born to 2 addict parents. So that's like, there comes the trauma, the horrific part of my life. So both of my parents were drug addicts. My dad was a really bad heroin addict, and he would do anything to get what he wanted. So sometimes that meant your kids. For me and my sister, that was part of it. And one of the things that I do is raising awareness and comforting, more than anything, comforting survivors, overcomers of human trafficking. And people look at this subject in such it's a third world problem, or even if it is happening, it's on this huge, grand, large scale, when a lot of the times the survivors that I work with, and me being one myself, is they were sold by their family. It might have been a father or an uncle. It might have even been a local pastor. Human traffic is not what people think it is. It is, you know, there's so many ways to explain that, but like everybody's story is different, just like everybody's healing process is different. So my story is like, kind of a rundown of it was, we were used, whether that was money exchanging hands or drugs, so that my dad could get what he wanted. And I really didn't understand that, because most of what was done to me, I was under the influence. So so drugs were something that were given to me before I even knew what they were. So of course I was bound to be an addict when I grew up. That was the only thing I was taught. That everything was the answer. Drugs were the answer to everything. And I didn't know any different. I really didn't. And I thought every family was as screwed up as mine. So from the time I was like 4 to 14, we moved a total of around 50 times. Because anytime something so my dad was a con artist, major master manipulator. So he would like start these little dummy businesses, whether it was in advertising or a fake newspaper or t-shirts or whatever. So he'd like set up a room in a hotel. He would take phone calls. He would raise money. He would make the money, and then we would move again. And that's just the way that I grew up. So I had no idea what stability looked like. And I made from the time I was very young, I created my own world to get through what was going on at home. One of my favorite memories growing up is, so we would go on these crazy long road trips because we would just leave. I mean, we left California at like 4 a.m. to move all the way to Florida. But we would take these long road trips, and there would be like nothing for me to play with, whether our toys were, you know, in a U-Haul behind us, they were left at a storage somewhere, they were just left in an empty house. Whatever it was, there wasn't a whole lot there. So we would stop at like these rest stops, or we would stop at hotels that were near like somewhere with sightseeing. And I would get out and I would collect all the pamphlets and I would cut them out and I would make my own little paper doll world in that back seat. Like, there was always a way for me to create through art. And after that, it became like, as I started to get older, probably like 11 or 12, I started writing. And the first thing I used to write was like, I used to write these reports on like what would happen on the local news, because I wanted to be a journalist. And so like I would read in these local newspapers all this crazy stuff, and I would make my own news reports on my mom's old typewriter. And like that's kind of how I escaped everything. I always was able to escape with art. However, I did not know that all that stuff that was happening to me and happened in my household was building up inside of me. I just thought that like I was just meant to go through with it and everything will be fine. If I just slap a big rainbow on it, nobody will know how much pain I was in. And I kind of like that just progressed, and I got to be so good at the I'm good face, you know, like if you smile, no one knows. And, you know, I was like that for most of my life. At 16, at 15, I was set up on a date from my mom with a guy. I don't use names. That's not part of what I'm trying to tell or what I'm trying to explain, because it's not important who did what to me. What's important is the growth that is shown from it. So anyway, so at 15, I was introduced to this guy. At 16, I was married to him. So I'm married at 16 years old. I have like no knowledge of what a healthy relationship looks like or what it looks like to be a wife. I'm still a kid. I was because they didn't want anybody to know what was going on at home. Everything was hidden. So my dad was very good at manipulating. And one of those manipulations was he basically trained my brain to think that everything him and my mom did was okay. So like I never understood that they were doing anything bad. I just thought, you know, waking up out of a cold blackout was just normal for me. Like I didn't remember anything, so I was okay. But that energy still gets inside of us, and it still hurts and it still damages. And so at 16, I was married, and he went off to the military, and I'm sitting there as a 16-year-old kid with a house to take care of, a car. He gets locked up in the brig for a fight he gets into with the military police. So now like I have a chance of losing my home. I don't know what to do. So I was introduced to this guy, and he was like, I can teach you something. And pretty much for me, besides drinking and smoking weed, I ran away from the whole drug scene because of the way I was raised. And so I was like, no, I don't want any part of that. Well, when I didn't have a choice, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this because I want to save my house and I want everything to be okay. So really my drug years took off when I was about 16, 17. And it started with like, you know, your fun party drugs. And, you know, I didn't think I had a problem. Well, by the time I was 19, I was a full-blown alcoholic. I couldn't get out of bed without doing a couple shots. And like that was my friend. That was my go-to. Alcohol and drugs were how I could escape. And then they would also help me artistically, because I could get super stoned and I could write for hours. And like, And I'd never shared any of that stuff with people. That was all very private to me. I had books upon books full of writing, and nobody had ever laid an eye on them because they were mine. And so anyways, by the time I guess I was about 19, I told my ex-husband I was going to leave him. And that's exactly what I did. It was a real rough situation, but I wanted to move to Florida with my mom. I wanted to try to have a relationship with her. Now that my dad was out of the picture, he had gone to a rehab after his mother had passed away. And let me speak a little on that, not about his death, but his mom, my grandmother Judy. She was the only person in my family that I never felt weird around. She was she read palms, and she read tarot cards, and she talked to me about spirit stuff, and she died when I was 18. And so when she passed away, my dad went on this big bender, and my mom finally left him, and we were all like, yes, this is awesome. We finally get to have a relationship with our mom. So my mom asked me when I was getting a divorce from my ex-husband, she said, you should move to Florida with me. And I said, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. I wanted to have a relationship with my mom. So I get down to Florida, and I'm there, I get off the Greyhound, and I'm there for maybe 30 minutes. And I'm walking around the house, and I go to the back bedroom, and I'm on the phone with my mom. And she says, do you see it? And I look over, and I'm like, I see a stereo with like purple lining around it. And before I even heard that he was there, I knew he was there just looking in front of me. So I knew my dad was there. And here was this whole thing once again where I was trying to have a relationship with her, and he's still in the picture. So she's like, hide it from your grandparents, hide it from everybody. We're not going to talk about the fact that he's here, but he's clean, Chrissy. He's not doing drugs, so it's okay. But I was, and my friends were, and that was so easy for me to jump right back into. I'm not going to go into like the whole thing that happened, but basically at 21, my dad died. And I didn't even realize like the toll the abuse had taken on me. So, excuse me. When I was 21 and he had passed away, the psychiatrist I was seeing looked at me and said, you have Stockholm Syndrome. And I said, what is that? And they said, you completely sympathize with your abuser, and we don't know what to do for you. So once that happened, my mom moved on. She's with my stepdad now, which is a whole messy story in itself. I moved back to Nashville with all of this grief and anger on top of me, and I still slapped on the I'm good face. So about a few months after he died, I got really, really drunk one night. I was staying at a hotel with some friends, and I jumped off the roof. I have no recollection of it. I'd been drinking for hours, devouring pills like they were Tic Tacs. I was institutionalized at that point, and the way they explained it to me was, we found you, like I had no broken bones. I had a bruised ankle and some bruises on my legs. They said, but the psychological part is what we're worried about. They found me in the dirt, drawing a picture, talking about how I wanted everything to be so pretty. They said I had the mind of maybe a 6 or 7-year-old. So this went on for a while. I got out, they gave me medication, then I started self-medicating, and this progressed, the drugs progressed, my lifestyle progressed, and I'd never had the ability to hate people. I've always carried, no matter what, like I've always just carried a huge, huge heart, a lot of love. And so anyways, this progressed, the drugs got worse, I got worse, and I was so good at hiding it, So then it's just continued like this, but through all of it, no matter how crazy things got, I always had art. Whether it was a sketchbook or painting on walls or You know, like I had a little group of friends that I hung out with in my 20s, and they called us like an anarchist group because we were very anti-government, very anti-establishment. But we could take like a broken down abandoned house and we would just turn it into this huge piece of living artwork. So not only did I have the ability to like love and create, I also had the ability to like meet people that became like family. And we would take care of each other, man. We would cook for each other. I remember at one point there was like 9 of us in a house, and we all had, like most of us in the house had pneumonia. It was horrible, but at the same time, it was some of the happiest memories I have with those people. We took care of each other, you know, like everybody went out to get medication for each other. We cooked soup for each other, or, you know, like whatever it was that it looked like. And all of us came from our own ways of like broken homes. And so then in my 20s, I met my son's dad. And my drugs got worse because when we got together, we had decided we wanted a baby. And we wanted to have like a good, calm life. So I was going to stop doing that to try and have a child. And so we would try to have a kid, and I would miscarry. We would try again, and I would miscarry. And the reason was, the doctors explained, was they said that I had so much scar tissue damage from the abuse that it was very hard for me to hold a child. Pardon. So we went through this for about 5 years, trying to have a kid, miscarrying, you know, surgery after surgery, miscarriage after miscarriage. I call that point of my life, I'm working on my life story, and I call that point of my life the metal apple juice phase. And the reason I call it that is because they used to make me drink this crap every time I would go have another DNC or an ultrasound, and it tastes like metal. So to cover up the flavor, they always had like a few choices to put over it. Either you could have orange juice, which that would just make it taste like more metal, grape juice, or apple juice. And for some reason, I always chose apple juice. So every time I think of that phase of my life, I think of my metal apple juice phase.
Sounds like a band.
It doesn't it?
We could do like this for the microphone, please.
Yeah. Oh, you're good.
Appreciate it.
Hello. So, you know, this went on for like 5 years, and the doctors kept telling me, if you keep trying, it's going to kill you. And in the middle of this, in 2007, I had an accident. I got hit by a car walking across the street. So I had back surgery in 2007. So at this point, I was a drinker, and I was doing party drugs, but I wasn't like doing that stuff. So when I had my back surgery in 2007, you know, I had done opiates a few times, but I had never like just taken off with them. And after my back surgery, I'll never forget that first rush laying in the hospital bed. I was like, I just want this pain to go away. And part of it was, yay, the pain went away. And part of it was, ooh, the pain went away. And like that took me to a different place. So, by 2007, same time I'm struggling trying to have a baby, opiates became my new best friend. Finally, I got pregnant with my son in 2009. He is my 8th pregnancy and my only living child. And so I was going to pain management at the time, and I'm trying to take care of my kid. Well, they told me in order for him to survive the pregnancy, they had to put me on bed rest. So I was in bed, oh God, I don't know, like 6 months out of my pregnancy, I was laid up. And I was like weaning off the opiates and trying to make sure that he was okay. And when I was, you know, I just remember going, you can do this, you know, and like weaning off of them. But he gave me a reason. You know, I finally had a reason to straighten up my life, was my little boy. So I had my son in 2010. His name is Roselle. He's amazing, which that name is actually from it means the angel of mysticism, and it actually means the mystery of God. And which is really funny to be somebody that would name a child after an angel, because man, I had no faith. I didn't believe in any of that stuff. With my dad being well, just say what it is, with my dad being a pedophile and a con artist and a preacher, everything I was exposed to in the church was tainted. So like my faith or any of that, I didn't believe in any of that stuff. So what I did was, I've always believed in like the earth. And so when I named my son that, I didn't really know why. I found out years later that like it was meant to be. So by the time I had him, I was really trying to straighten my life out. I was working 2 jobs, taking care of him, you know, just trying to be, you know, a mom. I left his dad when my son was 6 weeks old. So I was a single mom. And I was in like, I thought I was in such a good place, you know. I wasn't in relationships for a pretty long time. I was working all the time, coming home, taking care of him. In 2011, when my son was a year old, a little over a year old, I met a guy once again. And everybody in my circle, all of my friends and my sister, were all like, this is a good guy. He doesn't drink, he doesn't do drugs, he barely even cusses, this is fucking great, you know? And I'm like, okay. But there was something in me that went off like an alarm bell with him. And I kept telling myself and convincing myself that that's just your paranoia, it's all the stuff you've been through. He's great, like he looked good on paper. He was insanely jealous and very abusive. And we were together for about 7 months when I came home one day, and he started, I had a roommate at the time, and her dad, my roommate at the time, her dad was also a pedophile, and she wanted him out of the picture. So she proceeded to go to my ex and ask him for this, and basically they committed murder. And I was the only one who would testify. So the night that it happened, they killed a man in Unionville. And the night that it happened, he comes back to the apartment. He says that he pretty much knows he's going to get caught. He doesn't know what to do, but he wants me to leave the country with him and my son, me and my son. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, thank the gods that my kid is on his weekend with his dad, so he wasn't there for that. So he tells me the only way that, you know, he's leaving is with me, and the only way I'm leaving is if we go get my son. So TBI, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, kicks in our doors at like 3, 4 in the morning, and they proceed to lay us on the ground. Thankfully, one of the officers had known me from being a server on 3rd shift at IHOP. And he says, hey, I know her. Chrissy's really good. Let me talk to her. They take us down to the Harding police station, and they question us for like 12 hours. I mean, like the gory details, I didn't know any of that. All I knew is that this crazy man had just gone and told me that he's going to get my kid. So when they asked me, that's what I told him. I said, he is threatening the safety of my child. And thankfully that I did that, because that's where they found him. He was parked catty corner to the apartment complex where my son was with his dad. And had I not turned him in, like, it could have gotten a whole lot worse. After the abusive situation with him, I went way underground with my kid. In 2014, I testified against other people that were involved in it. It was absolutely insane. I would not put my name out there. My name hit the papers, but like I did not put my name out there. And then somebody called me and was like, hey, your story got sold to Snapped. So it was like no matter where I went, I could not escape that. So then, even while taking care of my son, the closet using got really, really bad. Drugs were my answer for everything. And it was like that for a while, you know. And then I got arrested. I've had one arrest my whole life. And I got arrested on a drug charge. And they took my son, and rightfully so. But so I got arrested, and that was the first time somebody had ever said to me, you know, you can live a different way of life. I was like, what are you talking about? So what I always thought of rehab or getting clean was like 28 days later. I thought this was like something that was reserved for rich people. I never knew that that was going to be an opportunity for me. So in 2016, I went to treatment. I stayed there for 24 days. And then I asked the counselor there, will you put me in the strictest halfway house? He said, yeah. So I went to a halfway house, and it was very strict. You couldn't even have a phone until after 5th step. So here I am in this crazy strict environment, and I'm in my 30s, and I'm looking around going, did I just get grounded? Like I have no idea what stability looks like. I never went to high school, so I never dealt with any of the catty girl stuff. So here I am confronted with this for the very first time in my life going, I don't get it. Like I don't get what's going on. Like I didn't understand the competitiveness, and I didn't understand like why women always constantly try to one up each other. I was just like, can't we all just love each other? And so I was the oddball. And I got told by the house manager at that time, she literally looks at me and goes, you're never going to get clean because you're a walking poster girl for addiction, and you're going to fail. And I thought to myself, is that really just how they talk to people? Like, she's setting me up for failure. And of course, with all the things I've been conditioned to believe about myself, it was very easy to fall into, she's right. Like, I've been through too much stuff in my life. I'm not meant for this. And it also went to, I'm not an addict. I'm not an addict. I'm not an addict. It's just the trauma. And that went on for a while. And I was in and out of the rooms. And I got to start seeing my son again in 2016. I went down there to spend time with him. And my best friend of 8 years in 2017 got killed. And never mind the gory details. It sent me on the worst run of my life. And within 4 months, I am not a small chick. I'm 6 foot tall, always been thick my whole life. Within 4 months of his death, I weighed 140 pounds. And like, my organs were shutting down. I didn't know what I was going to do. My life was just over. My kid had been taken. Now my best friend was gone. That was it. I didn't care anymore. So I went on the worst 4 months of my life. And I used everything under the sun that I said I'd never do. And within 4 months, I was ready to die. Christmas Eve 2017, I don't know how to explain it. I don't care what you call it. Source, energy, God, whatever your particular name is for it. A higher power came into my life and shook me and told me, like, either you get clean or that's it. Like, you don't have to live like this, but you're sure gonna fucking die like this. So I called a friend and I got in recovery. And I came back to Nashville. I was living in Shelbyville at the time. I came back to Nashville, and I moved into a halfway house, and I was doing really good. And I had right around the time, so I got there December 27th, and I was doing well. And then February 14th, Valentine's Day, the halfway house I lived in burned down, and 3 girls died in the house fire. And I remember literally thinking to myself, like, does it ever stop? Does this shit ever end? So I knew that I was not safe. My house manager at the time, who I was very close to, was like, we need to put you somewhere. You already have a lot of trauma to deal with. So I went into a program, what they call like a Blackout Program, for 30 days. And I got, I stayed clean through this travesty. And this went on for a while, like I would be clean for a while and then I would use again. I would be clean for a while and then I would use again. And what I came to realize was, even though I was working on certain parts of me, I wasn't working on any of the stuff that started the addiction. And I'm not saying that some people are not born addicts. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't examine brain for addiction. But what I know is mine was trauma. And the more trauma happened, the better I got at hiding it. So that's what I started working on. So, and the big game changer for me was that. I was finally willing to do some work on that stuff, that inner stuff. What would that look like? Man, I didn't have the answer for that. And I didn't even know where to begin. Like, I knew I'd been to several therapists and that shit never did anything but irritate me. Plus, it made me really want to mess with the therapist's head, like, just to tell, like, let me tell them something funny. Really, it was distraction. And with a therapist, I would literally go in and be like, how's your day been? And they're like, what? No, we're here to talk about you. Like, watch this. So, and that's how it would go. I would go to therapy for a couple months and then I would leave. And I just didn't understand, man. So I joined more support groups and I was like, oh, okay, so I'm going to do this for a while. And through one of the support groups I was in, I was introduced to a local coalition here in Nashville, helping women and children who've been trafficked. And that word to me, I was like, that's not what happened to me. That's not it. I'm good. This is fine. I'll be great. So I started working with these women, these survivors, these overcomers. And like all I could think was, man, they're just like me. Like I relate to these women so much, but I haven't done the things that they've done. Like, what if they don't accept me? Or what if this isn't the right place for me to fit? You know, and it's always been about that. Like I was always trying to find a place to fit because I didn't know how any of that stuff worked. I grew up with absolutely no structure. So I was just like, okay, well, I like this part of it. I don't like this part of it. So I'm not a religious person. I'm a very spiritual individual. So once again, I tried to fit to make others happy. Doing the support groups and things like that was good for me, but I was re-traumatizing myself because I wasn't ready for all that. Well, I call it shadow work, but I wasn't ready to like rip my guts out and expose them to everybody. So a friend of mine was like, Chrissy, you write poetry. And I was like, yeah, man. They were like, oh, isn't that how you deal with a lot of things? I said, yeah, but I've never shared that with anybody. But you should. So I started going to a local open night, poetry night, and I got up there and shared. And there was something inside of me that exploded on that stage. I got to tell all the horrible, dark secrets without having to tell them that it was me, you know? So I got to tell this story and I got to help other people, but I didn't have to get super vulnerable in front of a therapist. I didn't have to like give out the gory details, which I'm going to say my poetry is pretty raw and it can get pretty graphic. But there's still like names that I can give for that stuff. And there's still ways that I can remove myself from it. So artistically, I was healing because I finally got to talk about the things I was going through. Therapy wasn't working. The support groups weren't working. Doing steps in recovery, there was just something missing. And I started getting into crystals. And I was like, this stuff's so hokey. What am I doing? You know, like I went to like festivals with people and stuff like that. And what spirituality looked like to me from anybody from that standpoint was I took a sheet of acid and now I'm spiritual. Cool. Like that's how I explained it. All that stuff made sense to me when I was tripping. Otherwise, I was like, man, that stuff is so fluffy. I can't do that. And I was a really, really heavy metalhead. Like everybody tells me all the time now, like you bring such a light. And I'm like, yeah, you should see pictures of me when I was younger. Like I had such a like raw, you know, like fuck the world, anarchy rules. You know, I don't want any of that. Everything I owned was black. Everything. And I didn't realize how much of a reflection that was of what I was feeling inside. So anyways, when I got into poetry and then I started getting into crystals and somebody told me that like in the program I'm in, you get to choose your higher power. But I still kept hearing people say, God, God, God. And I'm like, oh, this is so exhausting. I can't make this work, whatever you call it. So one of the first places some of that changed for me was I went to a Hindu temple. And there was something so sacred and beautiful and connected about the chanting and just walking around the temple. There's no fire and brimstone. There's no preacher. It's literally just a community of people worshiping what they believe to be this purity that comes into the world. So that's when I kind of started to walk around the temple and I kind of like, that's where I first kind of started getting in touch with what spirituality looks like to me. And I started building a relationship with a goddess. And my whole life changed. I went from, I can't do that to spirituality became the very breath that I breathed. I got into a book called You Are a Goddess, and for the first time when I started to think about this deity that like reigns over me or helps other people, I can't view it from a masculine standpoint because of what happened to me, because of all the abuse I endured and what men look like to me. But you're telling me like I can have a higher power that's female? Like, what? This is amazing. So I started reading this book, and years of trauma started pouring out of me. Just unbelievable. I didn't even understand I had this much tears in my body. And, you know, I once helped sell dope out of a halfway house. And within so much time of working on myself spiritually and working on myself in recovery, I was managing a halfway house. And I was like, I don't know how this happened. This is really weird. But like they became my whole life. And I got to do more spoken word, and I got to work with more survivors, and I got to be with women every day, from someone who never wanted to be around women to, you know, everything in my life was about the feminine grace, the divine. She is divine. So anyways, the further I progressed, I also did the thing of wearing the I'm Good mask, and right around the holidays, which was when I usually would start using again. I made it through the holidays, but I was like, I hate this. Like, I'm not doing anything they're telling me to do because I just want to get out of here. I had gotten into a really healthy relationship. I wanted to be with him, but really I was just trying not to deal with myself. So the crystals and the book became like my safety net, and I just kept reading and I kept reading. And then I started doing energy work, and I can't even explain to you what it feels like to have 15 or 20 years of trauma pour out of you that you didn't even know was in there. Through connecting whatever your healing is. And my healing is like that. You know, psychiatrists are not for me. Writing is something I do like breathing. So of course, writing about what happened is not going to really change things for me. But actually changing the vibration of my spirit is where it started to work, and where it still works today. So let me talk a little bit about what that's led to. Man, so like, yes, human trafficking is tragic and scary and sad, but there is another side of it. When you get to see a little girl rescued who barely has ever spoken, and now she is living in a home where she is safe, and she has her first pet, and she's loved and supported. Or you get to see someone who's never had any self-worth, and all of a sudden they have people around them willing to do anything for them. That's what I want to bring to the world. I don't care if it's by wrapping crystals and giving people gifts. I don't care if it's by doing energy work. I don't care if it's through charity. I don't care if it's through poetry. I am here, I know 100% that I am here to make a difference in people's life through being compassionate, loving, and supportive. And like right now, especially, that's what we need so much of in this world today. And we forget about that. Like, we live in such a fast-paced, boom, boom, boom society, and I want this and more of that and this big house and this car. And like, I've never given a shit about material things. It's just not who I am. And I see people like, they'll be in recovery, or they've been out of human trafficking for a while, and they start doing good, and they have a good job, and they have a nice car, and they have a relationship, but they still don't have that thing that fills that empty hole inside of us. And that's healing. And like I said, whatever that looks like for you, it does not matter. Healing is what we all need, person to person and as a collective in society. So I heard this really amazing thing, and I have to share it because it's just great. If you didn't grow up with a strict mama, you don't know what it's like to be told to go to your room. But that's exactly what Mother Earth is doing to us right now. She's saying, go to your room, because we need to replenish. We need to go inward and realize that this can be helped, this can be fixed, but it's not through making things like more strict or more tight, but it's through empathy, it's through love, it's through compassion. Things can only change if we change, and everything changes person to person. You know, for us to change as a collective, every person has to work on themselves, and they have to care enough to do it. And that's what I give. Wherever I go, I just want to have integrity, but I just want people to know that right here where you're at, I can love you. Whether it's sitting with a friend while they detox, or going to visit a friend in the hospital, or whatever it is, whatever way, small or big, that I can show compassion in the world today is enough. You know, and there's some people that have never been shown that and never knew that anybody cared about them or loved them. So, you know, if I can give anything to this world, it's love, compassion, and empathy, which I used to think was a curse. I used to think being this empathic was a curse. And now I see that it's a blessing. And I also learned that all the pain that I've been through, there's a purpose to it, man. There's a beautiful purpose, and I get to see it every time someone tells me, like, I feel like I have some self-worth today. You know, that takes a lot of work to get to that place. We just have to remind ourselves to keep going no matter what. And
we're going to have to wrap this pretty soon, but do you want to end with some poetry?
Yes. Yeah. It's like we're on the same
page.
page.
I was reaching down, I was like, I'm guessing she's
okay. So there, you know, technology can be clouded and irritating, but it can also be really convenient. Okay. This was a dream, a representation of what I wanted to be, a house filled with love, compassion, and understanding. Our gravel driveway was paved with rigs, empty bottles, aggressive pleas, and thick-plagued desires. I wanted swings, laughter, and playmates, but our doorways were packed with anger and judgment. Our kitchen smelled of delicious food and broken plates. Finger-licking sinners who chomped at holy bits. Living in weekly churches that were barren within. He preached of love and the Trinity. However, in our broken home, he was gifting me to teenage boys and filthy strangers. Every time I think of this part of me, I think of a song I would sing when I was a little girl. I can't believe I'm actually about to do this. One of my favorite movies was All Dogs Go to Heaven. All I have is a picture in my mind how it would be if we were together. Let's pretend that you're far away. Let's say you write to me, and you promised in your letter that you'll come home to my heart. When you come home, we'll never be apart. If I keep dreaming of you, start believing it's true, soon you'll come home. Soon you'll come home. Soon you'll come home to my heart. Here these lyrics made me feel safe for a glimmer of a moment. Love left a home in me even when it was broken.
Wow. Oh, Chrissy, that was beautiful. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and end there. Thank you so much for coming in and talking. Do you have a way that people get a hold of you, or do you have a company that you like if people are seeking to go to a healer or something, how do they contact either you or the company that you work for?
Through right now, just everybody can contact me through Facebook. I am working on getting a webpage started. A lot of the stuff with COVID has pushed back a lot of work that we've done. I will be working on a project this year called From Brave to Broken. So women that want to, or men, whoever would like to tell their story about coming from tragedy to triumph, you can always get a hold of me on Facebook. It's Chrissy Love. You can also send me an email at loving, LOVIN, every, MIN 13 @gmail.com.